Okay, good evening, all. I hope I'm audible to you all. So, last week we started the lesson one, and we had a look on the research and the importance of having a research and the way of continuing a good research, the steps we need to follow uh, to do a good research work. We discuss and the process, the general process and the purpose and the role of the supervisor, role of the students. So those are the main things we discuss, and the communication as well. And then we move to the academic writing. I'm just going through the concepts we discussed last week. So we discussed about the characteristics of the good academic writing. We identify a few major characteristics that should be there in our academic writing. So then we identify different elements in our scientific paper, right? So usually these are the main elements that we can identify in a thesis report or in a scientific paper. So then we had a look on the research title, right? Each components we discuss in detail, right? The abstract and the introduction part. So especially on the introduction, I told you that it should be follow the funnel style. So that means it should start with a very broader introduction to the, like giving a background to give a more, eventually narrow down and into our specific research issues or to our specific study, we narrow down the broader introduction later on in our introduction. So that is how we practice the funnel style when you write the introduction. Then we move to the aims and objectives. So I told you that our aims and objectives should follow the SMART category. So it should be, these 5 characteristics should be there, right? Our objective should be specific and it should be measurable one, it should be attainable one, and real, or let's say the characteristics. We need to be very careful when we define our objectives, right? අපිට ඕනි විදිහට objectives ලියන්න බෑ. අපිට achieve කරන්න පුළුවන්, අපිට measure කරන්න පුළුවන්, right? අපිට තියෙන time frame එකෙන් අපිට achieve කරන්න පුළුවන් objectives අපි set කරන්න. සහ ඒවා අපේ research study එකට relevant වෙන්නත් ඕනේ. අපේ aim එකට match වෙන්නත් ඕනේ. Right? We break down our big aim into more manageable small objectives. Right? So at the end of our study, we are going to achieve these objectives and ultimately we are going to address the aim of our study. Right? At the end of our research study, we can check whether we have achieved our targets or not. While having a look on these objectives, usually in the discussions, we address these objectives. One by one, we address these objectives. So your objectives should follow this SMART category, right? And then we move to the methods. And then we talk about the results part. And under results, right, that is how we explain our findings now. We explain our findings. So there we can, use tables and the figures, any pictures to represent the data we collected, right? So although we are using the tables and the figures, so we should add clear pictures, clear images, clear charts, or if you add any graphs, it should be very clear, which allow the readers to, very easily understand. And you should use proper numbering and the captions, right? Table captions, figure captions should be there. So the general formatting should be followed. And I told you that if you can remember under each table and a figure, although you add your findings, your data, your results, your collected data into a, I mean, if you represent your data using a table or a figure, it doesn't matter you use a table or a figure, you should add a brief explanation about the figure and the table, or else the table you have added, right? A brief introduction. Below the table, below each table and below each figure, you should add a small description, like explaining what you have added, what you are explaining through the added picture or added image or added graph or chart or whatever the things you have added. You should give a proper, very brief introduction, right? So not a big one. You can use 3 to 5 sentences and just explain what you have added in those tables and figures. So then we just had a look on these figures and the tables. And yes, so those are the things we discussed so far last week. And then moving on to the discussion. So I think last week we didn't discuss this part. Give me a minute. Sorry. So moving on to the discussion part. So this is where you know, mm, discuss your results that you have presented earlier in the results part. Here, this is the place where you interpret the results you obtain, right? Earlier, in the earliest part, you explain your findings, your collected data, and moving on to the discussion. So this is the place where you interpret your findings in order to achieve your objectives, right? So you need to explain here what your findings explain, right? You need to explain here what your findings mean in relation to the objectives and the main of your main study, right? So, you should compare your findings with relevant to the expected results that you have had, and with relevant to the background information you gathered. You should compare the findings you obtain under the discussion part. right? So this should be a very logical, this should follow the very logical structure. When you develop the discussion part, right, you should start by starting with giving us a summary of the key findings you obtain, and then you have to explain how they align with your study, and then how they differ from your research questions, and also how they differ from your expectation. You should explain them well. In the middle part, right, you have to discuss any expected results and what they might imply, and if there are any changes in your findings, you have to clearly explain them. When we collect the data, when we are going to study, we have an initial plan. So we have some intended outcomes. Sometimes we can't achieve that outcomes, like 100% we can't achieve them. Sometimes unexpected results can be there. So anyways, so whatever the results you received, you had to explain them under the discussion part, right? Although you receive some unpredictable, unexpected results, unexpected findings, right? Then, differ than your intended outcomes, you have to explain them very clearly, right? With the limitations and the assumptions you had. It's really important to mention your limitations in your study, right? Sometimes the sample size may be a problem, right? Or else there can be some potential bias, right? Some factors. There are some cases we can't do experiments on certain sectors. So you had to explain the limitations you had when you conduct the data analysis, data collection, and the other experimental studies as well. You had to clearly discuss how your findings, agree, or let's say contrast with the previously published work, right? Before you move to the discussion results and discussion part, we conduct some, background study. We study the past researchers and their works, like already published works we study before we run our work. So once we collect the data and once we analyze it and once we move to the discussion part, we should clearly explain whether our findings, whether we can agree with the other previous published work with relevant to our findings or not. There are some cases we can state that we can agree with those works, or on the other hand, there are some cases that we cannot be agree with the results we obtain. right? ඒ ඔප්ෂන්ස් දෙකම තියෙනවා. සමහරවිට අපිට එන results වලින් අපිට කලින් කියන්නේ past researchers ලා කරලා තියෙන දේවල්, ඒගොල්ලෝ publish කරලා තියෙන දේවල් එක agree වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්, disagree, contrast තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේ දේවල් discuss කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? So, and at the end of the discussion part, again, you can, give some conclusions, small conclusions, like some general conclusion can be given about your study, and also the general suggestions for the future studies as well. You can give based on the data, based on the findings you obtain. Right? So when we develop the discussion, so this is how actually we develop our discussion part. So I told you that it follow a very logical structure now. So we have a beginning part and the middle part and the end part as well. So usually in the beginning part, we start with, answering the research questions based on our findings, right? We collect the data and we analyze it. And then we have some summarized data. So based on the data, based on the findings we have, we should answer the research questions, right? Initially, if you can remember, we develop research aim, research questions, research objectives. So what we develop, right? Before we conduct our research, first we should have a research gap, then we have a research question, research aim, research objectives are there. So we should answer the research questions we had based on our findings. So that is basically what we do in the beginning part of the discussion. So this is a very straightforward part, right? We simply explain what our data tells us, right? In response to our studies, objectives, and the questions, we explain, okay, what our data explain, what our data tells us, right? It should be aligned with the research objectives and the research questions we have. And then moving on to the middle part, what we do is, so that is the place where we connect our study to the previous research. I told you that we can compare our study with the others. So we can have a comparison with the previous works when we move to the middle part of the discussion. Initially, we should explain our findings with reference to our study objectives and the research question. Moving on to the middle part, we can have a comparison with the previous work, right? We can compare our results with the past studies to show how our findings support for their existing knowledge. Or else, on the other hand, how our findings differ from the existing knowledge. So in either way, we can compare the previous works and the findings we obtain. Right? We can also interpret the meaning of the results, and we can discuss any strength or limitations of the study as well in the middle part of the discussion. Right? And then moving on to the final or end part of the discussion. So we move to a broader context, right? We go for a conclusion part, right? We conclude the study here when we move to the end part of the discussion while summarizing the key points we had. Right? We can highlight the significance of our study, right? We can explain how we fill the research gap or in the research knowledge, and we can explain why it matters in our field or in our study, right? Likewise, we can explain the significance of our study, like a brief summary of the key findings we obtain. So that is how usually we develop the discussion part, right? So then the last part, usually in a research paper or in a, let's say, in a research thesis report, let's say. So conclusion, that is the before the referencing, we had a conclusion, right? After the results and discussion, we had a conclusion, very small chapter. So in the conclusion, what we do is we have to briefly summarize the key findings of our study, right? It is not a very big chapter. It is a very small chapter, but research discussion is quite big than the conclusion. In a conclusion, we can add 1 or 2 pages and we can give a brief summary of the key findings of our study, right? So we can highlight why our research work is significant and how it contribute to the field, right? What are the benefits we can obtain? So, or else you can explain some practical implications of our study, right? So likewise, so basically the significance and the implications of the research study should be explained. And it is really important to point out the areas for the research, I mean, future research. Right? So it is really important to, give some suggestions for the future research, right? You can suggest some future research works, future research ideas as well with relevance to your study, right? With these suggestions that your study is a part of an ongoing conversation, so you can give more suggestions for the future researchers. So this is a very short and a very small, concise chapter, usually not more than, 2 pages, right? Maximum, usually we write 1 page conclusion, right? But not more than that. So 1 or 2 paragraphs can be given under conclusion, right? Giving a brief summary of the key findings. So that is how usually we add these elements in a research paper or a thesis report. Then moving on to the most important part of this chapter, the referencing part, right? So I told you that to give some support for our opinions, we should add in-text citations and then referencing as well, right? Referencing වල parts දෙකක් තියෙනවා. in-text citations add කරන්නත් ඕනේ. කියන්නේ අපේ report එකේ ඇතුලේ citations add කරන්නත් ඕනේ. ඊට පස්සේ report එක ඉවර වුණාට පස්සේ end referencing කියලා ලොකු list එකක් add කරන්නත් ඕනේ. අපි in-text citations වල add කරන හැම citation එකක්ම අපේ reference list එකේ in detail තියෙන්න ඕනි. Right? So let's have a look on the citations and the referencing. So what do you know about referencing? Have you ever used references or citations?
Oh, miss.
Sorry?
Oh, miss. පාවිච්චි කරලා තියෙනවා.
Okay. So, ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ පොඩි idea එකක් ඇති. පොඩි හරි idea එකක් ඇති referencing කොහොමද use කරන්නේ කියලා. So anyways, let's go through this referencing. Yeah. So basically it allows you to back up your opinions, right? Because you are doing a scientific work. Doing a research means you are engaging with some scientific work. So you should have a backup for your opinions, right? We can't state anything as per our own views, own suggestions, or any bias ideas. We can't write in our research report, thesis report, or in an article or research paper. We need to give some backup for our opinions that we state in our research papers or thesis report. Right? Some credible sources should be there. So that is why we use the references. So by including these references or in-text citations or in referencing, you show that your ideas are based on the facts. Right? Your ideas are based on the research that are conducted by the others and the theoretical knowledge you gather, not on the personal bias. Right? So if you can add proper referencing, that means you add some credibility for your research work, right? When you are going to, especially when you are going to submit your final research and when you are going to publish your work, you should add more credibility for your research work because it shows that you have relied on some established research and the theoretical knowledge. Right? And also it helps you to establish your authority on the certain topics as well, while indicating that your findings are well supported and, and also the fact-based and evidence-based one, you can add more credibility for your work through this referencing, right? Both in text and in referencing. Right? It also allows your readers to trace the sources you have used. Right? We add in-text citation, we add end referencing. No? So any readers who read your research paper, they can even trace the sources you have used. Right? You can provide them a learning opportunity as well, just to verify the information and even to explain further. You can give them an opportunity to learn more and verify your findings through the references you have added, right? So when we find a research paper, we can find out the references. So if we need to gather more information about the sources you have stated, we can trace them. I'm sorry, please ignore the background noises. And the another important thing is, proper referencing is really important to avoid the plagiarism as well, right? Which occurs when you use someone else's ideas, you should give a proper acknowledgement. If you use someone else's ideas or someone else's research or the theoretical knowledge, if you use someone else's word without giving them a credit, that is a problem. So you can avoid that problem, which goes under the plagiarism, through this proper referencing. Right? මං කියන්නේ reference දැම්මා කියලා plagiarism වලට එන්නේ නැහැ කියලා අපිට ඒක avoid කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? අපිට ගොඩක් අඩු කරන්න පුළුවන් referencing වලින්. හැබැයි 100% අපිට කියන්න බෑ අපි එහෙමම අරගෙන ඡේදයක් දාලා references දැම්මම ඒක plagiarism වලට එන්නේ නැහැ කියලා කියන්න බෑ. හැබැයි අපිට credibility කියන්නේ acknowledge කළා researchers වල අපිට පුළුවන් හරි plagiarism percentage එක minimum කරගන්න පුළුවන් referencing වලින්. right? And to be more ethical in your research works as well, you should add this acknowledgement, right? Proper credit should be given to the authors, or else the authors, the ideas you have gathered, right? The referencing ensures that you are acknowledging the works of the other researchers properly, right? So that is why we use the referencing especially to practice the ethical consideration as well, to protect the scientific knowledge and the other researchers' works. So, and also always, if you include a reference for every sources of the information you use, that means you are doing a good work, right? That may be include the books or any articles or maybe the websites or any other materials, right? You can refer anything, but you should acknowledge them while giving them a proper credit. So you can use the references to give that credit, right? And to make the references easier, you can use different tools like the EndNote or Mendeley, right? The most formal way is EndNote and the Mendeley. And in Word, we can simply add the references as well, right? The word itself, or else you can use EndNote or Mendeley software you can use. And to manage your references, right? Both your index citations and then referencing. To generate citations automatically, you can use Mendeley and the EndNote. And there are so many online tools and other tools as well. You can use any, but this is the most formal way of adding citations. So I will show you how to use the Mendeley. So, I mean, no need to write, add the citations and the references manually, right? Manually add කරන lazy as citations, because we are asked to add, use different referencing styles. That may be APA style, that may be Harvard style, right? Likewise, we have Chicago style, we have different referencing styles. So usually in our institutes, we will ask you to use APA styles, right? APA 7th versions you will be asked to use. So it is really hard, and it is, it is not practical if you add them manually. So it is better if you can use the word itself, or else Mendeley or EndNote or any other online tools to add your citations and the references automatically, right? So here I have added the Mendeley guidelines side. Can you see the screen? So here you can see different types of referencing styles. I have added here picture. You can get some sort of idea about how we can add the index citation and the references. So there are two cases when we add the index citations, right? If you add the citations in the text, you can use this way. And if you do not add them in the text, I will show you, you can add this way, right? So Harvard style and the APA style, Chicago, MLA style, likewise, we have different type of the referencing styles. And usually this is how, when we add in-text citation, we usually add the author's name and the year they have done the research, the published year. And we're moving on to the reference list. In references, we add the whole details about the reference, right? The author's name and the year and the publications, if they have volume numbers or page numbers, we add everything in the reference list, right? That is why I told you that it is not practical if you add them manually, right? You can use that Mendeley or any other softwares to automatically add the citations, right? It is really easy if you can practice either way, right? Online tools also you can use. So here you can see this is the APA style, right? Small example from APA style. If you have one author, right? If you have, when we conduct a research, we may have one author, two author, or maybe three authors, maybe 4 to 5 authors, maybe 10 authors. We have number of authors. We can have number of authors. But in bachelors, we usually have one author and also our supervisor. So that means 2 authors we have, right? You and your supervisor. And there are some cases that we can do individual research and group research as well. So you may have number of authors. So based on the number of authors you have in your study, the citation styles may be different, right? If you have one author, you can simply add the name and the year, right? In between the name and the year, you should add a comma. And if you have 2 authors, we use and notation, right? Here you can see Smith and Jones, comma, 2018. If you have 3 or more authors, let's say 4 to 5 authors, so we simply add one name and it at ETAL dot comma, et al and the year. So that is how we usually add the author's name and the years when we have one author, 2 authors, or 3 or more authors, right? That will be depend on the authors you have in your study. So I have added few instructions here. So you can refer them and you can simply download them as well. I will try to share them. I will add them on LMS. Now, I hope you have LMS access. So you all can download them. I will add them on the LMS, or else simply you can Google and download, right? So if I go to the this one, APA style, can you see the screen? I have shared a document here APA regarding APA style. Can you see it? Can you see the screen? I have shared a document. ඔයාලට මගේ ස්ක්‍රීන් එක පේනවද? මම මේ document එකක් share කරලා තියෙන්නේ APA style එක ගැන. I don't know whether you see or not, because you are not talking. There is no point of explaining this. At least you should give the answers. I mean, you can put the answers in chat box now. I don't know whether you understood or not. I don't know whether you can see my screen or not. Is it visible now? Okay. Okay. So this is a document I downloaded from internet. So you also can download, right? So anyways, I will share this with you guys. So this is the APA Referencing Styles 7th editions, a manual. So you can refer this in order to get an idea about how you can add the the in-text citations and the in-referencing. If we have one author, if we have two authors, if we have a book, if we have some journal articles, likewise, if you have different, sources, you can refer this manual in order to get the idea to identify the way of adding the in-text citations and the in-referencing, right? This is University of Moratuwa referencing guide, right? There are many more reference guides, right? So this one belongs to University of Moratuwa, but that's not a problem. You can use any, right? මේ referencing style එක මොන university එකෙන් දැම්මත් කොහොම දැම්මත් වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ නිසා ඔයාලට මොන guideline එකක් වුණත් use කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැම එකෙම තියෙන එකම දේ තමයි. ඔයාලට ඕනේ guideline එකක් use කරන්න පුළුවන්. referencing style එක ගැන idea එකක් ගන්න. හොඳ idea එකක් ගන්න. right? මේකේ Moratuwa University එකක්. තව මං link add කරලා තියෙනවා වෙන universities වල ඒවත්. ඔයාලට ඒවත් refer කරන්න පුළුවන්. right? Usually we add the surname of the author and the year, right? And in between we add a comma. If we add them in the, if we add narrative citation, that means in the text, if we add the citation, we use this format. If we do not add the narrative citations, we can add this format. right? සමහර වෙලාවට අපිට in-text, ඒ කියන්නේ in-text කියන එකේ parts දෙකක් තියෙනවා. අපේ text එක ඇතුලේ. ඒ කියන්නේ එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි මෙහෙම කියමුකෝ Smith, let's say the Smith is the author, so Smith has explained that blah blah blah. If we want to say like that, we can use the narrative citation format, or else අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් අපිට sentence එක දීලා author ගේ නමක් මොකුත් text එක ඇතුලේ කියන්නේ නැතුව sentence එක දීලා අන්තිමට අපිට පුළුවන් citation එක දෙන්න. right? එතකොට අපි within brackets වල තමයි surname එකයි year එකයි දාලා sentence එකේ අන්තිමට within brackets අපි ඒ details දාලා in-text citation එකක් විදියට. ඒ citations ක්‍රම දෙකක්. in-text citations වල parts දෙකක්. අපිට sentence එකටම add කරන්න පුළුවන් author ගේ details. එයා මෙහෙම කිව්වා. එයා මෙහෙම explain කරලා තියෙනවා කියලා ලියන්න ඕනේ නම් අපිට මේ narrative citation එකට යන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපිට පුළුවන් sentence එක අපිට explain කරලා අන්තිමට අදාළ author ගේ surname එකයි year එකයි දාලා within brackets ඒ details දාලා අපේ sentence එක close කරන්න පුළුවන්. right? So the two types are there. You can use either way. There are no any limitation. It is totally up to the writer or researcher, right? So here you can see the way of adding 2 authors, 3 or more authors, and the corporate authors, right? And the book chapters, articles. So there are many more ways. You can refer this. I will share this with you. This is about the reference list, right? The in-reference list. So usually when we add the in-reference lists, it should be in alphabetical order. If you use Mendeley or EndNote, it will be automatically updated under the alphabetical order. No need to, copy and paste. It will be automatically updated, right? අපි Mendeley හරි මොකක් හරි use කරනවා නම් online tools වලත් එහෙමයි. alphabetical order එකට automatically update වෙනවා අපි citations add කරද්දී අපි manually එහා මෙහා copy paste කර කර එහාට මෙහාට කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ ඒක automatically add වෙනවා right end reference එකේදී සම්පූර්ණ details තියෙන්න ඕනි authors ලා දෙන්නෙක් තුන් දෙනෙක් 10 දෙනෙක් හිටියත් ඒ ඔක්කොගෙම surname එකයි ඉතුරු නම් ටික initials එක and sign එකේ combine කරලා year එක publication එක මොකක් හරි site එකක් publish කරපු මොකක් හරි publisher කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවනේ ඒ details මොකක් හරි book title එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒ details volume එකක් page number එකක් ඒ හැම detail එකක්ම reference list එකට එනවා right ඔයගොල්ලෝ site එක අර softwares use කරනවා නම් ඒවා automatically update වෙනවා ඒ නිසා ඔයාලට ඒ ගැන worry වෙන්න දෙයක් නැහැ ඔය manually update කරනවා නම් තමයි ඒ ගැන worry වෙන්න ඕනේ අපි එතකොට අපි අතින් type කරන්න ඕනේ හැමදේම Mendeley හරි EndNote හරි ඔය online tools තියෙනවා. MyBib හරි මොකක් හරි එහෙම online tools ඕනි තරම් තියෙනවා. ඔය හැම එකෙම ඒව automatically update වෙනවා. ඒතකොට ඔයගොල්ලන්ට ඒ ගැන කිසිම ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ. worry වෙන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. right? alphabetical order එකත් හැදෙනවා. in-text citations වල add කරන්න ඔයාලගේ end referencing list එකත් automatically update වෙනවා. ඒක අමුතුවෙන් add කරන්න ඕනෙත් නැහැ. I will show you how it works. So anyways, you can refer this. This is a good guide. Show you how to use the Mendeley. So this is another guide, another referencing guide regarding the APS style. So I have already added the link as well in your the lecture slide. So you can go to that link and download this. This is also same as the Model 2 Universities one. Right, all the guidelines are given here, the way of explaining, the way of adding the index and the end references with relevance to the APA style 7th editions. And regarding the Mendeley, right? So Mendeley is used to add the in-text and end references, right? So before adding the Mendeley, before you use the Mendeley, you should know the way of downloading the research papers. So do you know the way of downloading research papers? Maybe using Google Scholar, let's say. There are many more sites, but you can, very simply, you can use the Google Scholar. Have you used Google Scholar to download the papers? So you can simply go to the Google Scholar, especially when you are, I have already told you that to write especially when you are going to do a research, you should do a proper background study, right? To do the background study and also to develop your own literature review, you should collect papers. So there are many more sources that you can download the papers, but there are sometimes we can, download them free. But there are some cases we can't download the full paper, right? We have to pay and get the paper, right? No need to, we can't pay money and get the papers, no. So you can get the help of the lecturers. There are some lecturers who have the, access to different sites to download the papers, or else there are some unethical sites as well to download the papers, right? So the Google Scholar is the most simplest way that you can use to download research papers, right? Past research papers, or else there are many more. I will show you how to use the Google Scholar. So you can simply type Google Scholar in prompt, and then using and sign or else or sign, you can search the papers here. Let's say you need to find the papers with relevance to lean manufacturing and civil engineering, let's say. So within inverted commas, type lean manufacturing. Close the commas and then type and, then again within inverted commas, civil engineering. Right? Then you can find out some related papers in between lean manufacturing and civil engineering. If you add here the O sign, let's say, you may receive some sort of unrelated papers, right? If you can add and sign here, you may receive related papers in between lean manufacturing and the civil engineering. So simply write the keywords, right? You know the keywords you need to know. No? So, I mean, you need to have in your studies. So type the keywords here and just search it. So you can find out number of research papers here in Google Scholar. And if you can remember, I told you that we refer back around 10 years back, we refer when we search for research papers. අපි ගොඩාක් අපස්සට ගිහිල්ලා research papers බලන්නේ නැහැ. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට 10 to 15 අපි usually කියන්නේ 10 years back papers තමයි අපි refer කරන්නේ. right? ඒකෙන් කියන්නේ නැහැ අපිට 1994 විතර papers refer කරන්න බෑ කියලා කියන්නේ නැහැ. refer කරන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට සමහර වෙලාවට ඒ වගේ ගොඩාක් පරණ papers refer කරන්න වෙන වෙලාවල් තියෙනවා. theoretical පැත්තෙන් අපිට proof දෙන්න අපිට ඒ වගේ papers use කරන්න වෙනවා. හැබැයි ගොඩක් වෙලාවට දවසින් දවස update වෙනවනේ. එතකොට ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ඔය අපි දැන් 1990 ගණන් වල ඒවා refer කරොත් සමහර විට ඊට වඩා updated දේවල් මේ recently හොයාගෙන තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට අපි ළඟ ඒව නැතුව ගොඩාක් පරණ ඒවා refer කරොත් එහෙම අපිට updated research ටික miss වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ නිසා ගොඩක් වෙලාවට අපිට advice කරන්නේ 10 years back. අපි දැන් 2025 නම් ඉන්නේ 2015 වල වගේ ඉඳලා අපිට research papers refer කරනවා නම් හොඳයි. right? 10 years back ඉඳලා තමයි අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් research papers refer කරන්න කියලා කියන්නේ. හැබැයි ඔයාලට ඕනි නම් එතනින් එහාට ගිහිල්ලා research papers refer කරන්න පුළුවන්. right? එහෙම limit එකක් නැහැ. So you can add the custom range here. Let's see 2020, 2015 to 2025. Right? You can search. And even you can, sort by the date, right? There are so many sorting types here, right? Any types or review articles, right? Including patents, including citations. You can search any here, especially at the custom range, and you can identify many more papers here with reference to the keywords you have added, right? And there are sometimes you can directly download the papers here. The PDF versions are there, but sometimes you can't directly download the full paper, right? If you go to the first one, you can see the full paper is here. You can simply download it, right? No problem. You can simply download it. Full paper is here, right? So you can simply download it. But there are some cases we can't directly download the full paper. So here, you go to this one. We are not allowed to download the full paper, right? අන්න එහෙම වුණාම තමයි අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් එන්නේ. අපිට full paper එක download කරන්න බැරි අවස්ථාත් එනවා. එහෙම වෙලාවට ඔයාගේ ගොඩක් වෙලාවට lecturers ලට සමහර lecturers ලට senior lecturers ලට තියෙනවා sites වලට access. ඒගොල්ලන්ට දීලත් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට download කරගන්න පුළුවන්. සහ unethical way එකක් තියෙනවා research papers download කරන්න, right? මම නිකන් help එකක් විදිහට කියන්නේ. එහෙම download කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. Just copy the link, right? Just copy the link. And go to Science Hub. I don't know whether it's it will not be visible. So there are so many cases that we can download it from this site. But එහෙම බැරි වෙලාවලුත් තියෙනවා, right? එහෙම වෙලාවට අපිට පුළුවන් මේ site එකේ තියෙන එක refer කරලා download කරගන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් access තියෙන විදිහට එක download කරගන්නත් පුළුවන්, right? access තියෙන කෙනෙක්ට දීලා download කරගන්නත් පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් අර මම පෙන්නපු සයිට් එකේ ඒක unethical එකක් ethical way එකක් නෙවෙයි. හැබැයි ඔයගොල්ලෝගේ studies වලට ඕන වෙන නිසා මම කියන්නේ එහෙම download කරගන්නත් පුළුවන්. හැබැයි එතනිමුත් දෙන්නේ නැති වෙලාවල් තියෙනවා. try කරලා බලන්න papers download කරන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් මෙතනින් directly download කරන්නත් දෙනවා. මෙතන මේ PDF කියන sign එක තිබ්බොත් අපිට directly download කරන්න පුළුවන්. right? මීට අමතරව there is a site called Core. And here also you can download the papers, right? You can simply type the keywords here and search and download. And other than that, we have this site, Zenodo. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing it correctly. Zenodo. So here also you can search and download the papers, right? There are many more sources. You can find them and download, right? Anyway, any sources you can use and download the papers as much as possible, right? Because we had to filter them sometimes. Although we collect 100 papers, at the end of the day, we can only refer to 5 to 10 papers. That is the problem we have. So find the papers as much as possible using any sources you have, right? Google Scholar, hari එහෙම නැත්නම් ඕනෙම source එකක් use කරලා ඔයාලට පුළුවන් තරම් papers download කරගන්න, right? So then I will show you how to download the Mendeley. So simply type Mendeley desktop and go to Mendeley Reference Manager. And here you can see, you can download the Mendeley for the Windows, or if you have Linux or something, or MacBook or something, you can Mac OS or something, you can download as per your requirement. If you are using Windows, you can download Mendeley desktop for the Windows, right? So you can simply click this and download, right? So that will be downloaded. I have already downloaded and installed. That is how we can download the Mendeley software and then okay, so this is, I have already downloaded the Mendeley software. So you can simply download it and install, right? So once you download it, it shows as this. So I have already added few papers here. So here, if you go to all references, so here it shows all the references you have added, right? To add the references, you have to download the papers first and you have to upload them into the Mendeley software, right? Then it will be visible like this. And here, if you go to the collections, you can see here, collection is here. You can create collection as per your requirement, right? Let's say you are going to start a new research, right? So you can simply create a collection and you can give a name. Let's say research 1 and tick. Right? So this is a new collection. So here I have earlier added a collection called C1. So under C1, I have added few papers, right? If you need to add separate papers for research 1 collection, you can click research 1 and you can simply drag and drop the research papers into this tab, right? So, You can see here. Simply drag and drop the papers and it will be automatically uploaded to the Research One collection, right? So then once it is uploaded, it will be visible like this. All the details will be visible like this within your Research One folder, right? So then if I go to the C1 collection, you can see here, these are the papers I have added. Or else if I go to the all references, so all the papers you have added, it will be visible in this interface, right? If you go to the recently added one, it will be visible like this. The recently added papers will be shown under the recently added one, right? Then you should link this Mendeley to the Word documents, Word, Microsoft Word you have, right? You can simply add the paper, download the papers, and you can simply create a collection, and you can simply upload the papers onto that into that collection. And then what you have to do is you should link the Mendeley into the Word doc. So to do that, you can see here tool, right? You can see here in this ribbon, Mendeley Reference Manager, File, Edit, and then you have the tool. Then go to the tool and install Mendeley site for Microsoft Word, right? Go to Tool tab, then click Install Mendeley site for Microsoft Word. right? Mendeley එක download කරලා ඔයාලට පුළුවන් මේ විදිහට මෙහෙම simply collections create කරන්න. ඔයාලා research 10ක් කරනවා නම් ඔය ඔක්කොගෙම research papers එක ගොඩේ තියාගන්න එපා. collections 10ක් create කරලා ඒකට අදාළ research papers අදාළ collection එකක ඇතුලේ ඔයා research 5ක් කරනවා කියනකො research 1 2 3 4 කියලා දාලා research papers ඔයා download කරනවා මේකට add කරලා තියාගන්න. right? අපිට ඔයාට research paper එක refer කරන්න ඕනි වෙලාවට directly මෙතනින් ගිහිල්ලා paper එක view කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. right? ඒ benefit එකක් තියෙනවා. research paper එක තියෙන තැනට ගිහිල්ලා ඒක view කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. Mendeley එකට ගිහිල්ලා ඔයාට මෙහෙම click කරලා research paper එක refer කරන්න පුළුවන්. right? PDF එක පෙන්නනවා. හැබැයි එහෙම කරන්න ඔයා download කරලා තියන්න ඕනි කලින්. download කරලා මේ folder එකට upload කරලා තිබ්බොත් ඔයාට click කරලා ඒ PDF එක view කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඊට පස්සේ මෙන්න මෙතන තියෙනවා මේ tools කියන tab එක. මේ tools කියන එකට ගිහිල්ලා install Mendeley site for Microsoft Word කියන එක click කරන්න ඕනේ. right? මොකද ඔයාගේ Mendeley එක Microsoft Word කියන එකට link වෙලා තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඔයා මෙතන add කරන citation, ඔයා මෙතන add කරන references ටික, add කරන papers ටික Word එකේ පෙන්වන්නත් ඕනේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපිට Word එකේ type කරද්දි citations add කරන්න බෑ. right? ඒක කරන්න ඔයා Mendeley download කරලා ඉස්සෙල්ලම මේ tools කියන එකට ගිහලා install Mendeley site for Microsoft Word කියන එකට යන්න. right? Then I will show you how to add the citations in Word. Okay, so here I have shared a Word doc. And once you install the Mendeley software, install it for Microsoft Word, then what you have to do is you have to, add it into the Microsoft Word, right? Install it and then add it. So to add it, click the Add In sign, right? In the ribbon, if you go to the Home ribbon bar, so you can see add-ins. Here you can see add-ins. Click it and add the Mendeley. If I click it, so here you can see I have already added it. So then it shows like this. Let's imagine I have not added it. So you can go here, you can go below and you can find the Mendeley sign. This is the Mendeley, the image, the logo of the Mendeley. Right? You can find the Mendeley logo here and simply add it, right? So that will be added there. So if you cannot find the @in sign under home tab, go to the insert tab and find the @in sign. @ins කියන sign එක ඒ tab එක හොයාගන්න සමහරවිට insert එකේ තියෙනවා. insert එකේ නැත්තම් home tab එකේ @ins කියලා tab එකක් තියෙනවා. right? මේ @ins කියන එක click කරාම ඔයා add කරලා තියෙන Mendeley software එක මෙන්න මෙතන යටින් පෙන්නයි. එතනින් ගිහලා මේ add කියලා තියෙනවා click කරන් තනං එතන add කරාම මෙන්න මෙතන උඩ පෙන්නනවා Mendeley එක word එකට add වෙලා තියෙනවා. right? ඔය ඕන ක්‍රමයකින් add කරගන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් Mendeley කියන එක පෙන්නන්නේ නැහැ. ඔයා install කරාට බෑ. ඊට පස්සේ word එක open කරලා මේ add-ins වලට ගිහිල්ලා Mendeley software එක word එකට add කරගන්න. right? ඊට පස්සේ references වලට ගියාම අන්න එතකොට ඔයාලට Mendeley site කියන එකක් මෙන්න මෙතන පෙන්නනවා. අපි referencing වලින් තමයි මේ tab එකෙන් reference tab එකෙන් තමයි citations add කරන්නේ. ඒතර මෙන්න මෙතන තියෙනවා Mendeley site එක. right? මෙතනින් අපිට normal විදියට endnote bibliography add කරන්නත් පුළුවන් word එකෙන්. හැබැයි මේක තමයි effective විදිය word එකෙන් add කරනවට වඩා. right? So once you add the Mendeley into Word, you can see this Mendeley logo here, site with Mendeley, right? This is the Mendeley sign. So now you have added the Mendeley into your Word doc. So then what you have to do is click the Mendeley site, right? Once you click the Mendeley site, it will be visible like this, right? So here you can see all the references I have added into my Mendeley software. It will be everything, all the references will be visible here, right? All the references, right? If you can remember, I told you that we can add collections, no? We can have separate collections for easy reference. So if you go to this tab, you can see the collections here, right? C1, Research 1, Research 2. So whatever the collections you have added, you can see here, right? So simply click. Let's say I want to go to the C1 collection. Click it and the C1 or else the research papers I have added into the C1 collections will be visible here. Not all the papers, only the C1 related papers will be visible here. If we go to the, let's say, research one, right? I only added one paper now. So if you can remember, I added only one paper under research one collection. So that paper will be visible here. So likewise, as per the requirements you have, you can select the collections and find out the papers you have. Right? So these are the papers I have added under C1 collection. And here, if you go to the citation settings, right? You can change the citation style, right? Here, American Psychological Association 7th edition, that means APA styles. If you need to use, let's say, Chicago or Harvard style, you can change it. You can go to this part and you can change it. Here, there are many more referencing styles. You can change it as per your requirement. But we are asked to use APA styles, so we can have American Psychological Association 7th editions. And if you can change the language as well, right? We use the English now, so we can keep it as easy. Then go to the references, and you know that we are going to refer to the C1 collection, and just write the paragraphs you need to add here. Right? Write the paragraph. Let's say I need to add the first reference here. I need to add the reference from the first one. So here, if you click this arrow sign, you can see the way that you can use, right? You can insert, you can use any styles here, right? As per your requirements. And you can add the citations, right? Click it and insert citations. So it will be visible like this. No need to edit manually, right? Simply type the sentences and then click the reference you need to add and click it and insert citations. So that will be added, right? Then the problem is how we can add the end references, right? Just type the reference list or references and keep the cursor here and go to these 3 dots and insert bibliography. Then continue. The citations, the in-text citations you have added, that will be automatically updated in your end references. Right? අපි in-text citations එකට add කරාම අපි නිකම්ම simply type කරන්න ඔයාට ඕනි දේ. ඊට පස්සේ මෙතනින් ඔයාට ඕනි reference එක. ඔයාට මොකක් හරි key term එකක් තියෙනවා නම් මෙතන search කරන්න. search කරාම ඔයාගේ paper එක මෙතන එයි. අපි හිතමු improving මේ paper කියලා. මේ citation එක click කරලා insert citation එක කියලා click කරාම ඒක මෙතන automatically update වෙනවා. right? ඔයාගේ paragraph එකේ automatically update වෙනවා. එතකොට ඔයා reference add කරන්න මෙන්න මේ dot 3ට ගිහිල්ලා insert bibliography කියන එක click කරාම reference එක automatically මෙතනට full details add වෙනවා. right? DOI එකත් එක්ක මේ ඔක්කොම details automatically update වෙනවා. right? ඊට පස්සේ ඔයාට worry වෙන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. ඔයාට පුළුවන් ඊටු ටිකක් type කරගෙන යන්න. just type whatever the things you need to state. And let's say you need to add this reference, tick at the tick, and then insert citation, and that will be automatically updated in your reference list, right? Then keep a full stop, and then again write. Let's say you need to add this one. See, it will be automatically updated in your reference list. And we don't need to worry about the alphabetical order. It will be updated according to the alphabetical order. Right? අපිට කිසිම විදියකින් worry වෙන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. Reference list එක දිහා බලන්න ඕනෙත් නැහැ. ඔයා මේ ඡේදේ ඔයාගේ paragraph එකේ add කරන හැම reference එකක්ම ඔයාගේ reference list එකේ automatically update වෙනවා. right? අපි මෙතන දැන් හිතමු මේක තියෙන්නේ අපි narrative විදිහට නෙවෙයිනේ. අපි හිතමු අපි in-text citation ඒ කියන්නේ text එක ඇතුලේ citation එකක් දානවා කියලා. එතකොට අපිට පුළුවන් මෙතන ටික් කරලා අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් text එක ඇතුලේ දානකොට මේ විදිහට යන්නේ author's name within bracket year එක. click කරා. එතකොට අපේ detail එක එනවා. ඊට පස්සේ අපිට පුළුවන් sentence එක type කරන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපේ paragraph එක type කරන්න. එතකොට ඒ citation එක automatically අපේ reference list එකේ update වෙනවා. right? දැන් ඔයාලට බලන්න පුළුවන් ඒ අකුරෙන් ඊළඟට N W X ඒ විදිහට automatically update වෙනවා. කිසිම විදිහකට worry වෙන්න දෙයක් නැහැ reference එක. right? ඔයාලට මේක format කරන්න ඕන නම් විතරක් select කරලා format කරන්න පුළුවන්. right? format කරන්න පුළුවන්. වෙන කිසිම දෙයක් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. automatically මේ ඔක්කොම update වෙනවා. is it clear? එහෙම තමයි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් අපි Mendeley use කරන්නේ. ඒක හරියම lazy use කරන්න. ඔයාලට ඕනි papers ටික ඉස්සෙල්ලා download කරන්න. download කරලා folders වල save කරන්න. Mendeley download කරලා collections හදලා collections වල papers ටික add කරන්න. ඊට පස්සේ Word එකට install කරලා මෙන්න මේ add-in sign එකට ගිහිල්ලා Mendeley කියන Mendeley software එක ඔයාගේ Word එකට add කරගන්න. ඊට පස්සේ references වලට ගියාට පස්සේ reference කියන tab එකට ගියාට පස්සේ ඔයාලට Mendeley site කියලා එකක් පෙන්නනවා. right? Mendeley site කියලා එකක් පෙන්නනවා. මේක තමයි ඒකේ logo එක. Mendeley site කියන එක click කරාම දකුණු පැත්තේ මේ විදිහට ඔක්කොම references ටික පෙන්නනවා. right? මෙන්න මේ arrow එකට ගිහිල්ලා all references කියොත් ඔයාලට තියෙන ඔක්කොම references ටික මෙතන පෙන්නනවා. right? එතකොට ඔයාලට මොනවා හරි download කරපු paper එක මොනවා හරි keyword එකක් මතක නම් මෙතන search කරලා ඒක මෙතනින් filter කරගන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයා collection එකක් use කරනවා නම් මේ collection එකක් ඇතුළට අපි C1 කියලා හිතමුකෝ C1 ක්ලික් කරා. එතකොට C1 කියන folder එක ඇතුලේ තියෙන C1 තියෙන Mendeley එක ඇතුලේ right desktop එකේ තියෙන folders නෙමෙයි Mendeley එක ඇතුලේ තියෙන collection එකට ගියා. එතන තියෙන papers ටික මෙතන පෙන්නනවා. citations settings වලට ගිහිල්ලා ඔයාලට ඕන citation style එක වෙනස් කරගන්න පුළුවන්. මෙතන පෙන්නනවා preview එකක්. language එක වෙනස් කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. මෙතන insert citation කියන තැන මෙතන arrow එකක් තියෙනවා. මෙතනින් ඔයාලට පුළුවන් ඔයාලට add කරන්න ඕනි style එක. ඒ කියන්නේ ඔයා text එක ඇතුලේ අපි හිතමු මේ author මෙහෙම කියලා තියෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි හිතමු Smith 2025 has told that likewise we want to write like that. Right? අපි ඒ විදිහට ලියන්න ඕන. අපි සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ලියන්නේ author ගේ surname එකයි within bracket year එක. Right? අපේ ටෙක්ස්ට් එක ඇතුලේ author ගේ details අපි ස්ටේට් කරනවා නම් එයා කිව්වා එයා මෙහෙම ස්ටඩි කරලා තියෙනවා කියලා ලියන්න ඕන නම් අපි author ගේ surname එකයි year එකයි එන විදිහට year එක within bracket එන විදිහට තමයි ලියන්නේ. එතකොට අපිට පුළුවන් මේ පළවෙනි එක ටික් කරා. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපිට ඒක ටික් කරන්න නැතුව තියන්නත් පුළුවන්. ඒක ටික් කරන්න නැතුව normal විදිහට තිබ්බොත් අපේ මේ end reference විදිහට තමයි end reference කියන්නේ ටෙක්ස්ට් එක ඇතුලේ නෙවෙයි අපි sentence එක දීලා අදාළ reference එක within brackets දානවා. මෙන්න මේ විදිහට. right? අපි මෙතන මොකුත් ටික් කරන්න නැතුව තිබ්බහම මොකුත් select කරන්න නැතුව තිබ්බහම අපිට මෙන්න මේ format එකෙන් එනවා. right? ඊට පස්සේ ඔයා එක reference එකක් add කරපු ගමන් ටික පොඩි blank space එකක් තියලා එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයාගේ last page එකට ගිහිල්ලා references කියලා එකක් add කරන්න. references කියලා term එකක් add කරලා enter එකක් දීලා cursor එක තියෙන තැනට තමයි ඔයාගේ reference එක එන්නේ. ඔයාගේ cursor එක මෙතන තිබ්බොත් ඔයාගේ reference ටික ඔතන ඉඳන් තමයි type වෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා ඔයාගේ cursor එක tab එක ඊට යටින් එක space එකක් තියලා මෙන්න මේ දකුණු පැත්තේ Mendeley site එකේ තියෙන මේ dot තුනක් පෙන්නනවා. right? මේක මෙහාට තව අදින්නත් පුළුවන්. මෙතන තියෙන insert bibliography කියන එක. මේක ක්ලික් කරාම automatically ඔයා add කරලා තියෙන reference එක මෙතනට add වෙනවා. එච්චරයි ඔයා කරන්න ඕනේ. ඊට පස්සේ ආයේ insert bibliography එකක් කරන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. එකපාරයි ඒක කරන්න ඕනේ. ඊට පස්සේ ඔයාගේ report එකේ add කරන ඕනම citation එකක්. ඔයාගේ report එකේ 100ක් add කරාත් ඒකට අදාළ references duplicate වෙන්නේ නැහැ මෙතන. එකම reference එක add කරාද duplicate වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඔයා add කරන references index citations ඔක්කොම මෙන්න මෙතනට automatically update වෙනවා සහ මේ reference chart එක alphabetical order එකටත් set වෙනවා automatically. අපිට මොකුත්ම කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. right? So that is how we use the Mendeley software. I hope it is clear. If it is not clear, please let me know because you should use it in your assignment, right? I gave this regarding literature review. So in that case, you have to do many more citations, right? And also, I'm expecting you to add the referencing list as well. So you can use the Mendeley software for your assignment, right? And other than this Mendeley, there are many more online platforms as well. Yes, this is another online tool that you can use to add the citations. My bibliography. It shows as my bib. So here also you can add the citations here, right? You can add new citations, right? You can simply add the link here, right? You can search in Google Scholar and you can get the link that you need to download the paper. You can click the link. You can get the link and copy paste it here and search, and that will be visible in this citation list, right? Let's take an example. You can copy the link and paste it here and search. So, the required paper will be visible here and you can click it and you can simply save it. So that will be visible here. So if you need to get the in-text citation, you can copy. You can copy the in-text citations as well. And then finally, you can download that work site and copy and paste in your Word doc. So that will be used, that can be used in your research works as well. But Mendeley is the most effective way. So I recommend you to use the Mendeley or EndNote as well, right? Okay, that is about the references. Is it clear? Or do I need to explain again the way of using Mendeley?
It's clear.
Okay, thank you. So that is about the references. So here I have added a few links that you can download the reference guides regarding APS styles. So you can download them, and also the Mendeley guide also I have added here the link. You can use it and download and install it before you go for the referencing. So then moving on to the literature review. So that is the another important part under this first chapter. So that is where we refer to the past research papers, right? To give more credibility and to get to have a a good base for our study or a background knowledge for our study, we go for the literature reviews, right? And there are some cases we do literature review as publications as well, right? We can write review articles, right? While referring to these literature reviews, we can do write review articles and we can go for a publication. That is another way of going for a publication. But other than that, when it comes to our research works, to develop a good background study for our study, background knowledge for our study, we can have a literature review, right? So that provide a very objective and very thorough summary of all the relevant existing research and non-research literatures as well on our topic, right? Once we select a basic topic for our study, we can search so many research papers and review articles as well to get some a very deep and thorough summary about all the existing research works that have already been done, right? It always gives us a up-to-date details about the current literatures and the current topics as well that match with our selected topic and match with our selected area, right? We can make sure that our research is, grounded in the most recent findings and the discussions in the fields once referring to the up-to-date research papers. That is why we write literature reviews. So it usually helps us to justify the need for our study, right? To justify the theoretical base, to justify the, let's say, everything that we are going to do. We can justify everything in our study using a literature review, right? We can even show the research gap as well. To identify the research gap, we have to conduct a literature review while referring to research papers, right? While referring to the existing knowledge, and we can indicate some areas where more research is needed, right? We can identify some sort of research gaps that we can address in near future through a literature review, right? And also another thing is, literature reviews usually provide us a theoretical foundation for our study, right? It presents the theoretical data and some models, frameworks, everything it develop and explain us to develop a theoretical base for our study, theoretical foundation for our study. It will be helpful for us to shape our research and shape our research questions, hypothesis development. So everything we can develop in a good way once we move to the literature review, right? And to identify some trends and the methods and the methodologies that has been already used in past research papers, we can identify through a literature review. Right? So although we are referring to a new research topic, for the same area, many other researchers may have done many other research. So they may have used different technologies, different methodologies, different trends and methods in their studies. So we can identify those methodologies that they have used in their studies, and we can develop our own one to develop our own study. That is another benefit we can gain through the literature reviews, right? When we write the literature review, well structuring should be there, right? To make the literature review a readable one, it should follow a very structured process and a logical process. We should organize the review very logically while allowing the readers to understand it clearly, because this is where you give the background knowledge other than the introduction. So this gives theoretical base for your study, right? So you can group similar studies together, and you can categorize them, and you can help the readers to follow your analysis part and the review part step by step while following a logical order, even though you are writing the literature review. Not only your research report, but also in your literature review also, you should follow the logical order, because it allows your readers to follow your analysis part as well, right? You can categorize the sources you downloaded into different segments, and you can write them in different angles. You can categorize them into different themes, right? And you can structure your literature review, in a well developed and well organized structure. So that will be a good one, and a positive aspect that you can follow. And when it comes to literature reviews, correct referencing is the most important one. You should use the correct proper referencing styles. You have to cite the sources properly to ensure your review is credible, and to ensure your research, or to ensure your research study is academically strong, you should give the proper citations as well, especially in the literature review. Literature review is the chapter where we mostly use the citations, in-text citations, right? Any chapters වලට වඩා literature review එකේදී තමයි අපි citations, references ගොඩක් add කරන තැන. Right? මොකද අපි ගොඩක් පරණ research studies කරලා research studies study කරලා තමයි literature review එකක් ලියන්නේ. right? ඒක අපේ තියෙන අපේ study එකේ තියෙන variables වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි use කරන්න යන sampling technique එකක් relevant වෙන එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපේ concept එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට ඕනි theory එකක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ හැම දෙයක්ම අපි කලින් තියෙන research papers, එහෙම නැත්නම් theoretical papers, ඒ වගේ දේවල් study කරලා references එක්ක තමයි අපි literature review එක ලියන්නේ. right? අපේ study එක academically strong වෙන්න ඕනි, theoretically strong වෙන්න ඕනි, scientifically strong වෙන්න ඕනි. ඒකයි අපි literature review එකට ලොකු effort එකක් දෙනවා. මොකද ඒක තමයි අපේ theoretical foundation එක අපේ study එකට. right? අපිට proof දෙන්න පුළුවන් ඇයි අපි මේ study එකට මේ method එක use කරන්නේ. right? ඔයාගේ topic එකටම තව researchers 100ක් විතර use කරලා තියෙන්න පුළුවන් research, ඒ relevant research එක එක methods use කරලා. ඒකට ඔයාලට ඒවා compare කරලා බලන්න පුළුවන් ඔයා මොකද්ද කරන්න යන research එක. ඔයා මොකද්ද use කරන්න යන method එක. ඇයි ඔයා මේ method එක use කරන්නේ? මොකද්ද හේතුව අනිත් methods අයින් කරලා මේ method එකම refer කරන්නේ. ඒ වගේ දේවල් identify කරගන්න පුළුවන් හොඳ base එකක් හදා ගන්න පුළුවන් literature review එකේ. right? So when we write the literature review, we can conduct narrative literature reviews and the summative literature reviews. So narrative literature review means it provides a very broad overview of this topic, right? Of the topic you have selected. You can discuss the existing research in the general sense when it comes to narrative literature review, right? We focus on like summarizing and giving some critiques in the literature with like emphasizing and developing a very broad understanding of the research area you have selected. Like basically we give the broad overview to the selected topic. So that is what we are going to do on the narrative literature review. Right, so the selection of the study usually that is based on the researcher's judgment here, and there is no any set of methods for like how to collect and how to analyze the data here. We can select the papers based on the researcher's judgment and we can analyze it while summarizing them and while adding some critiques in order to give a broad overview of the selected topic. Right, we can identify the gaps as well. We can identify different areas that need to have some further research as well through this narrative literature review, as we are looking for a broad overview here. Right, we can often use it to formulate the research questions and research hypotheses as well. Then we have another one called systematic literature review. So it usually aims to answer the specific research questions we have. Right, in a very structured process, we are trying to answer the specific research question, not a broad overview about the research topic, but we are trying to answer the specific research questions under systematic literature review. Right, we systematically collect, we systematically evaluate, we systematically analyze all the available research on the specific research topic when it comes to systematic literature review. Right, it is like evidence-based conclusion when it comes to systematic literature review. Right, so that is the difference between narrative literature review and the systematic literature review. So usually when we conduct the bachelor's research and the undergraduate research, we combine those two, right? We can, most of the time we go for the narrative literature reviews, right? We are trying to get a broad overview about the topic, and or else we can mix them out, right? The systematic or narrative literature reviews we can use. Okay, so this is the way of conducting a literature review, like the process of writing a literature review. So first what you have to do is you have to identify a research topic or else a research area at least. Right? You have to start it by selecting a research topic or a research questions that you are interested in, or else you can identify a research area at least, right? සමහර වෙලාවට අපිට research topic එකක් ඉස්සෙල්ලාම identify කරගන්න බෑ. එහෙම වෙලාවට අඩුම ගානේ අපිට research area එකක්වත් තියෙන්න ඕනේ අපේ study එක කරන්න. අපිට පුළුවන් ටිකක් යනකොට අපිට formulate කරන්න පුළුවන් අපේ research topic එක. Right? And you should be very careful when you develop a research topic. It should be a specific one, and it should be broad enough to find some sufficient literatures as well for the review part. And you should make sure that the topic is very, feasible, and it should be relevant, and it should be feasible within your time frame, right? And also within your resources, because you have very limited resources and limited time. So you should check the feasibility as well when you select a research topic and a research question. So first what you have to do is you should have a research topic or else a research area, right? So then what you should do is you need to have you should review the secondary sources as well then to get the overview of the topic. So that is what we do as the second step, right? The secondary sources means those are the documents or else let's say the articles that summarize the primary data, that interpret the primary data. So that could be the review article, that could be the books, or else online resources. You can refer to any secondary sources to get the overview of the selected topic. You can start it by reading the overview of the articles, and you can have a general understanding about the topic first. And then what you have to do is you have to develop a searching strategy. That is the next step, right? You have to create a searching strategy that could be include the key terms or key phrases, or let's say keywords related to your research topic, or else you can search by referring to the keywords related to your research area that you have selected. So anyway, either way you can use to as the searching strategy, right? So that will be helpful for you to narrow down the number of sources you review, because sometimes we may download some unrelated research papers. So while referring to the key terms and the key phrases or any keywords related to our research topic especially, so you can narrow down the number of sources that we can download or that we can refer, right? Then what we have to do is you should use appropriate sources and primary research to download it. You can start by searching through the preliminary sources like the databases, like for an example, Google Scholar or Scopus. You can use any sites to search the preliminary sources. And then you can go for some original studies as well, experimental studies, survey studies, right? To find out the new findings, to present the new findings. You can go for any sources here, primary sources as well, to download to identify the papers. Then what you have to do is you have to check the references at the end of relevant research publications, right? You have to review the reference list of the most relevant articles and most relevant books. That is another way of finding out good research papers. You can identify few papers and you can review the reference list of those most relevant articles and most relevant books. So that is a good way to discover other important studies, right? Because they may add so many references. So you can even go to that reference list and you can discover so many important studies that you might have missed in your initial search, right? සමහර වෙලාවට අපිට initially අපි search කරනකොට අපිට හැම topic එක හැම area එකක්ම cover වෙන්නේ නැහැ, right? මොකද අපි perfect නෑනේ, right? අපි 100% perfect නෑනේ. ඒත් අපිට initially papers miss වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපි search කරන විදිහ, අපි key terms use කරන විදිහ අනුව අපිට හොඳ papers miss වෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි අපි download කරපු papers වල reference list එකේ තියෙන sources එකක් දෙකක් හරි අපිට refer කරන්න පුළුවන් නම් අපිට ටිකක් important studies ටිකක් ආපහු හොයාගන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට miss වෙලා මොනවා හරි miss වෙලා තියෙනවා නම් අපිට ඒවත් වැඩිපුර ටිකක් gather කරගන්න පුළුවන් reference list focus කරලා, right? That is another point that we can focus. And then what we have to do is we have to conduct the search, and we had to select the specific articles to the review. Initially, we searched for number of papers. Then we had to search and select the specific articles for our review, right? We had to perform a very thorough literature survey, and based on our strategy, we had to select the articles that are directly related to our study and that are, good quality papers, like we can have peer review papers, some reputed journal articles we can search, right? We had to narrow down our selection to the most relevant articles and to the most direct articles that are directly related to our topic, our research area. Right? We have to narrow down the findings we have. Right? Then what you have to do is we have to obtain the full text references. That is like the last step of this process, right? We have to, once we identify the relevant studies, we have to make sure that we access and we review the full text. Not only the abstract, right? There are some sites which shows only the abstract, right? Not only the abstract, we have to review the full text. You should make sure that you get the access to the full text or full paper, full journal article, full research paper. So it is really important to have the deep understanding and deep extraction about the specific details that relevant to your study. That is why we need to get the access for the full text, right? You need to download the full text. Abstract එක විතරක් download කළා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. Full text එකම full paper එකම ඔයාලා download කරගන්න ඕන. Right? You can obtain the full text references from the online databases or libraries as well. Or else you can go for institutional access as well, right? Simply in Google Scholar or Scopus or any sites you can use to get the full text references, right? That is how usually we start the literature review, right? Then we have to read the articles very thoroughly, right? We have to make sure that we understand the main arguments, main findings, and the main methods that they have used in their studies. We have to take notes, right? As you can remember, if you can remember, I told you that we should keep notes, right? Make notes on the following, major key points that relevant to each research papers you are referring to, right? You can highlight the purpose of the study. You can highlight the methods they have used. You can keep notes on the key findings they have obtained. You can keep notes on the strength and the weaknesses they had in their studies, right? And also you can refer to the conclusion part as well, right? You can study what was the research trying to discover or prove in their studies. You can check whether how was the study conducted in their areas, right? And you can check whether the research methods and the instruments they have used in their studies, whether it is a survey studies or experimental study, or is it a case study or case control study. So anything you can study and you can keep notes, right? You can have a look on the findings they have obtained, right? You can study, okay, what are the main results of that particular studies, right? You can identify the weaknesses, weak points, and the strength, right? What could be improved further. You can refer to the conclusion part and you can identify the future suggestions as well in those studies, right? So that means we need to have a thorough understanding about the research articles we are going to refer. Then we should organize them logically, right? We can group the studies by different themes, like the methodologies and depending on what makes more sense for your topic, right? Depending on different methodologies and the different factors, you can categorize them. You can group the papers you have downloaded, right? And then you can give a brief introduction to the topic and the purpose of the reviews. Likewise, you can structure your review logically while referring to those research papers you have downloaded, right? You can discuss the findings from each articles. You can organize them by themes and you can organize them by subtopics, right? You can make sure that you highlight the key findings, right? And also you can even identify the research gap as well. You can give some theoretical base for your research gap and the research questions. So likewise, you can conduct a literature review process, right? So that is how usually we conduct a literature review process. So I can't say like we need to refer, I can't exactly say the number of papers you need to refer. It is totally up to you. And it is better if you can read at least 50 to 30 papers at least, right? එකක් දෙකක් papers කියවලා නම් literature review එකක් ලියන්න බෑ. අඩුම ගානේ papers 10ක් 15ක් 20ක්වත් අඩුම ගානේ කියවන්න ඕනි. ඊට එහාට යනවා නම් හොඳයි. හැබැයි research gap එකක් identify කරගන්න, right? I told you that we can identify a research gap now. So to identify a research gap and research questions, we need to at least read 10 to 15 papers, right? Not less than that. 10 to 15 papers at least we should read. We must read. If you can read 30 to 50 papers, it is really good, right? Download the papers as much as possible. Then you have to filter it out. Once you filter it out, sometimes you have to remove the papers right? There may be some unnecessary, unrelated papers. So no need to read them. You can skip them. So then once you filter it out, you may have very limited papers. So read them very carefully, right? Sometimes 3 to 5 times you have to, very, you have to read them, right? Very simply, 3 to 5 times you have to read the paper to get the basic idea. right? සමහරවිට අපිට එකපාරින් රිසර්ච් එකේ තියෙන ඇබ්ස්ට්‍රැක්ට් එකවත් තේරුම් ගන්න බෑ. ඉන්ට්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එකවත් අපිට තේරුම් ගන්න බෑ එකපාරක් කියවන්න. right? ඔයාලා ඉස්සෙල්ලා එකපාරක් කියවගෙන යන්න. ඊට පස්සේ තව පාරක් කියවන්න ඔයාලට main key points identify කරගන්න පුළුවන් දේවල් highlight කරගෙන යන්න. ඊට පස්සේ පුළුවන් නම් තව පාරක් කියවන්න. එක දිගට නෙමෙයි break එකක් අරගෙන තව පාරක් කියවන්න. එතකොට ඔයාලට miss වෙලා තියෙන important points ටිකක් ඔයාලට මොනවා හරි technical terms තියෙනවා නම් ඔයා දන්නේ නැති ඒවා highlight කරගෙන යන්න. ඒ වගේ step by step research papers කියවන්න. right? එකපාරින් research paper එකක් අපිට identify කරගන්න බෑ. මොකද අපි කියවන්නේ තව කෙනෙක්ගේ idea එකක්. right? We can't understand everything in a research papers because it is totally new. Right? Because that was done by someone else. We don't know anything about the research paper. We may know the technical terms and the theoretical base, but we don't know, the 100% knowledge we can't grab while reading it one or twice. At least 3 times we should read the papers. right? පුළුවන් තරම් කියවලා ඔය highlight කරන්න, ඔය important දේවල් ටික highlight කරන්න. ඊට පස්සේ ඒවා sort කරන්න. Okay, so that is about the literature reviews. And then when we refer to the sources, we can, when we conduct literature reviews, it is really important to understand the different types of sources that we can, refer. Right? So we can go for primary sources, secondary sources, or theoretical and conceptual sources we can refer, right? That is the major categories that we can identify when we identify the sources for our literature reviews. So primary sources, that means the original materials or original evidences created by the researchers, right? Who originally conducted the research. Those are the original data, primary sources. Right? It provides very direct evidences or direct data on their study, right? With relevant to your research topic. You can even go for the primary sources as well when you refer to the literature reviews. Right? Those are the original research articles. You can go for original dissertations or original theses that are done by, let's say, graduate students based on their research. Right? You can go for some survey data, original survey data, original experimental research, original clinical trial data, right? Original reports from the government agencies. Those are the original evidences, original materials that we can refer. Then the secondary sources are there. Secondary sources means those are the sources that summarize and that interpret the primary research or primary data. Those are not the raw data. Right? Those are not the raw data. It summarizes the primary research data. Right? It provides an overview of the primary data and the primary research data. Right? So you can refer to the review articles, right? Some meta-analysis articles, right? Where we combine the data from different studies and draw some broader conclusions. We call it as meta-analysis. So under secondary data, you can go for review articles and meta-analysis or even book chapters you can refer as the secondary sources, right? And then other than these primary sources and secondary sources, we have conceptual and theoretical sources, right? Those are the sources that focus on the theories, right? Other than the primary and secondary sources, we may have theoretical sources. which explain the theories. Right? Theories අපිට වෙනස් කරන්න බෑනේ. එතකොට theories තියෙන sources උත් තියෙන. Right? එහෙම නැත්නම් concepts. Right? Already existing concepts that we cannot change. Right? The concepts and the theories that relevant to the research topic, you can refer in order to develop the literature review. Right? You can provide the theoretical framework or conceptual framework to guide your research while referring to the theoretical sources. Right? Theoretical papers you can refer, some conceptual papers you can refer. There are some theoretical books as well, where they discuss the theories and their applications. You can refer them in order to develop the literature review. Right? So very simply, primary sources, it provide the raw data and the original research data. And moving on to the secondary sources, it is like a summary of the primary research, or let's say the interpretation of the primary research data. And moving on to the theoretical sources, it briefly explain the theories and the concepts that provide the foundation for our study. Right? So those are the difference between these type of sources. So any of these sources can be used to develop the literature review. Literature review එකක් ලියන්න සමහරවිට primary, secondary sources මදි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට theoretical knowledge එකක් දෙන්න වෙනවා. ඒතර theoretical sources උත් අපිට cite කරලා use කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? So those are the common categories of the sources that we can use to develop the literature review. Right, so this is also explain the same thing. So okay, so here I have just stated how we can write a strong literature review. So what we have to do first is we have to clearly identify our focus, right? What is your research question? You should clearly identify your focus because you should have a clear, well knowledge and the idea about your focus before you write the literature review. Because a literature review provides a very objective and very thorough summary of all relevant existing research. So before you write your literature review, you should know, okay, exactly what you are going to achieve. What is your research questions? What you are going to address through your research? That idea should be there before you write your literature review. Then you have to search strategically, right? You may use the Google Scholar and the Scopus or ResearchGates. So whatever the sources you can use to strategically download and find the papers. And you can categorize them into key themes, right? I already explained them. I have just pointed out the key terms here, key steps here. Then you can compare and give the critiques by analyzing how they differ from each others. You can compare each and every studies you refer, right? You can download, let's say you download 10 papers, you can compare those 10 in between, explain the difference between those 10 papers, right? Explaining the methodological differences in between those 10 papers. And then you have to find out, okay, what is missing in their literatures in order to justify your study and to identify the research gap for your study. You have to find, okay, what is missing in their papers, right? That missing part should be addressed by yourself, right? Somehow, for a considerable level, you should find a way to address that missing part, right? And then you have to structure your own review while following a logical order. So that is how usually we develop a very strong literature review, right? I'll try to share a few literature review papers to give you more understanding, because your assignment is also regarding the literature review. So you can download the literature review and review articles as well from Google Scholar and Scopus and ResearchGate. or any other sources. I will try to upload few papers as well, just to give you the idea and just to show you how to write the literatures. Yes, so that is all about the first chapter. And this is about the literature review assignments. I will share you the guidelines. I just waited till I finish this lesson. I will share the guidelines Formally, I will share the guidelines via your WhatsApp groups within the coming weeks. And yes, I hope you now you know the way of using Mendeley and the online sites as well. I have another one to show you. This is another site that you can find out research papers, right? Connectedpapers.com, right? Connectedpapers.com. You can go to that site, and here you can see it map all the papers here, right? You can simply type the key terms here. Let's say lean manufacturing. So it shows all the papers here. So it shows the papers here, right? And you can yes, so once you click it, it shows all the, related papers here. It map all the papers here, right? You can go to that map and simply click the papers here, right? You can simply click, so it will be visible here, right? So you can download the PDF directly. Here the article will be directly downloaded. Right, so it is really helpful for you to download. So you can use this site as well, other than the Google Scholar, Scopus, and the ResearchGate. You can use this the connectedpapers.com site, and you can simply type the keyword and just click one paper, and it will show all the related papers here. Right, not all, many more papers will be visible. Right, so you can simply zoom it, and you can click the papers here. Right, once you click the papers, so it will be visible in the right side of the site, right? And you can go to the paper and download it. So here you can go to that site and you can download the paper. So that is another way of downloading the papers, right? Either way you can use. I will share a few sites as well that you can use to download. Hope that will be a good guide for your final research as well. So any of these sites can be used, right? Google Scholar is the most common one, right? Most of the undergraduate students are using. The connectedpapers.com, that is another way, and the Scopus, ResearchGates, and there is a site called Co and Zenodo or something. You can search. Yes. We have a few more minutes. Shall we take a small break and then start the chapter 2?
Okay, madam.
Okay, so let's take 5-minute break and then I will start the chapter 2 as well. So I will show you a few research papers just to show you the abstract and the literature review and the referencing part. And no, so last 2 weeks actually we conducted lectures through manual Zoom meetings now. So materials will not be available on LMS, and the recording links I have shared via WhatsApp groups now, so you can save them. Today onwards, all the recordings will be uploaded on LMS, right? So I will not share any recordings via WhatsApp groups. You can check them on LMS. All the recordings will be updated by IT team on LMS, but it will take 1 or 2 days, right? I mean, the other lecture giverla, other lecture recording upload it will take a few time for them to upload the recordings. So the recordings will be there in your LMS today onwards, right? But past 2 weeks, I have already shared the recording links that will not be there in your LMS. And the materials today onwards, all the materials will be uploaded on LMS, right? So you can go to the completed lecture tabs, right? I hope you got the LMS guide. You can go to the completed tab and you can find out the course tabs separately, and you can find out the materials. But your lecturers, separate lecturers, should separately upload the materials. I will inform all the lecturers to upload the relevant materials on LMS. So then you can get them through the LMS. I will also upload the materials on LMS. I think chapter 1, I shared it with you via your WhatsApp groups. But anyways, I will upload chapter 1 also on LMS. And I will also inform other lecturers as well to upload their materials on LMS today onwards, right? All the previous materials as well, but not the recordings. But the materials, I will inform them to upload. And this is actually a few papers, 2 papers I have just downloaded. So you can see here, as you can see, I told you that first we can identify the topics, and under that we can identify the author's name, right? This is the basic structure of the research papers, research articles. Then the author's affiliations are there, right? And then under that, we add the abstract, right? So before I add the abstract, we add the term abstract here, right? You can see. And then small paragraphs are there. That is the small summary about the major, I mean, the whole study. This is a small summary about the entire study, stating major areas, right? The key highlighting areas. And under the abstract, we add few keywords, right? So, and then we start with the basic introduction as well. This is same as a thesis report, but less detailed one, right? Thesis report is a very detailed one, right? It is a big work, a detailed work. But a research paper, it consists with a few details which we take from our thesis reports. So usually we start with the introduction, same as a thesis report. And then, yes, so here it specifically mentioned the literature reviews as well, right? You can see the citations, right? In-text citations, you can see. And then what I need to show you is, yes, so under research methods, research methodology, I told you that we mentioned the data collection part, data analysis, analytical part, how we are going to collect the data, what is the research instrument we are going to use, what is the sampling techniques, what about the sample selections, right? And then what about the data analytical part? What is the tool we are going to analyze the data? What is the reliability test? So everything we mentioned on the research methodology. So see here all the data collection part and the measures. So everything they have mentioned here. there are no any specific subtopics, so you can follow your own, but this is the general structure. We started the abstract, then introduction, then a small literature review, then the methodological part, then the results and discussion part, and finally the conclusion. So that is how we write a research paper very simply. You can add the figures, right? So you can see here figure names are there, figure captions are there, right? And here the table captions are there, right? So everything we discuss on the lesson one, you can identify here the in-text citations, right? And then the final discussion part, where we discuss and interpret our findings. And then final part is the conclusion. So that is very small description, a small conclusion stating especially the significance of our study and the practical implications and the future research ideas and also the limitations as well. If we have any appendix or any, let's say the data collection part or any data to be shown, you can add it under appendix. And so this is the end references, right? So you can see here it follows the alphabetical order, right? It follows the alphabetical order. So this is how we add the end references, right? You can refer to these references as well to search for many more, research articles, right? May reference refer කරලත් අපිට research articles හොයාගන්න පුළුවන්. right? අපි මේ මෙතන ඕනේ තරම් research articles එකල state කරලා තියෙනවා. අපිට ඒවත් refer කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි ඒක necessary දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. අපි කරන්න ඕනීමයි කියලා එකක් නැහැ. අපිට ඕනේ නම් පුළුවන් මේවත් refer කරන්න. right? And this is another research article. So here also you can see the topic and the author's details and the affiliations and the abstract. And there is a small paragraph you can see here. And under the abstract, we add keywords, right? And then same as the previous one, we add the introduction. In introduction also, we have to use the citations. We had to do citations as well in introduction, same as the literature. And here also you can see the specifically as literature review is there. And literature review also you can, add subtopics, right? You can have a, it is not necessary to add subtopics, but you can add subtopics to logically order your literature review, right? Under literature review, you can divide it into small segments and you can give the literature reviews. So that will be more effective than giving an entire introduction, entire details on the same topic, right? You can divide into subtopics. Here you can see lean construction, and then applications of lean construction and principles, and then measuring the effectiveness of the lean construction application. Likewise, this author has divided the literature review into subtopics. You also can do it. So that is really good if you can, break down the literature review into small segments, right? That will be more clear. And another important thing I need to state here is, most of the students, when they write the literature reviews, they write the author's name first. They put number 1 and write the author's name and explain. And then number 2, add the author's name and then explain their findings. And then put number 3 and write the author's name and then explain it. That is not the correct way of writing the literature review, right? This is the clear way of writing the correct way of writing the literature review. එක එක authors ලගේ නම type කරලා ඒක යටින් එයාගේ findings දානවා. ඊට පස්සේ අනිත් author දානවා එයාගේ findings දානවා. එහෙම නෙමෙයි literature review එකක් ලියන්නේ. ගොඩක් ළමයි ඒ වැරද්ද කරනවා. literature review එක ලියනකොට authors ලා 3-4 දෙනෙක් හොයාගෙන ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ නම ලියලා එයාලගේ ඒ නමට යටින් explanation එකක් දෙනවා. That is not the correct way of writing the literature review. Right? You can keep that for your own reference, but that is not a good way to add in your thesis report or these research articles. Right? So I will share these research papers. I will upload them on LMS so you can download and refer. but you can use this format, right? While explaining the theoretical things, while explaining the literatures in this way, you can add a small table and state specific theories and the principles and the methodologies each researchers have used in their studies. That is another way. But අර එක එක විදිහට කියන්නේ ඕත්තගේ නම දාලා ඒකේ යටින් explanation එකක් දාන එක නෙවෙයි proper way එක. explain කරලා ඉවර වෙලා ඔයාලට පුළුවන් ඒගොල්ලෝ මොනවා හරි methodologies එක එක methodologies. දැන් මෙතන නම් construction principles. එතකොට එක එක researchersලා use කරලා තියෙන construction principles ඔයාලට මේ විදිහට මේකේ විදිහට මෙහෙම state කරන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට clear reader කෙනෙක්ට idea එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් මොන වගේ principles ද තියෙන්නේ. construction principles ද තියෙන්නේ. lean construction principles ද තියෙන්නේ කියලා. right? මෙහෙම state කරන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි අර වගේ මම කලින් කිව්වා වගේ explain කරන්නේ නැහැ. right? So here also you can see the research methodology, the way of doing the research they have explained. And the figures and the tables, right? All the figure names are there, right? All the steps they have mentioned. Here they have added a table and the table captions are there. Above the table, usually we add the caption names, the table names, table captions above the table. And when it comes to figures, we add the figure names, figure captions below the figure, right? Below the pictures, below the figures, we add their names, right? And their labels and the captions. When it comes to tables, we add the table names above the table, right? So you can see the explanations are there. So research findings also there. And find the conclusion, and this is the references. So here also you can see in reference list, it follows the alphabetical order, right? And has follows the the proper referencing styles as well, right? So I will upload this on LMS, so you can refer those too. And I will try to upload few more. And also I need to explain the tenses that we use in abstract and the introduction and the methodology, literature review or so on. So usually when we write the abstract, actually, we use the present tense, right? And the past tense can be used to summarize what was done in our study, right? You know, the abstract is where we summarize our research work. No, abstract is the place where we summarize our entire research work, usually in one paragraph, right? So when we write the abstract, we can use the present tense to describe the study itself, and we can use the past tense to summarize what was done in our study. Because if you can remember, I told you that although it is the first thing you can identify in a research paper or in a thesis report, we write the abstract once we complete our study. So we can use the present tense to describe the study itself, and we can use the past tense just to summarize what you have done in your study, because you have already completed. Then to summarize what was done in your study, you can use the past tense, right? Other than stating like we collect the data from 150 participants or so on. Instead of that, you can state that data were collected from 150 participants. So past tense can be used to summarize the things that you have done in your study. And when it comes to introduction, there also we can use the present tense to describe the current knowledge and the current and the present established facts and the current theories. And in introduction also we can use the past tense to describe the previous studies. Right? If we are going to state some previous experiments and the previous outcomes, previous studies, we can use the past tense to describe those things in the introduction part, right? And when it comes to methodology, in methodology, again, we can use the past tense to describe what you personally did in your study, right? Example, for an example, the sample were collected from 4 different plants. The sample was the samples were selected from 4 different segments in that particular manufacturing plant or something. Likewise, you can use past tense to describe what you have personally did in your study. And other than the past tense, you can use present passive as well to describe the general and standards methods that you can use. Or else if you have any procedures, any standards methods, you can use present passive voice, right? And moving on to the results sections, results and discussion, the past tense can be used to explain the results and the findings and the results you obtain in your study, right? To explain your findings, you can explain it using past tense. Like if you add any figures or if you add any tables in your results section, I told you that we can use figures and tables now. So although you use past tense to explain your results and the findings you obtain, in case you use figures and tables, you can use the present tense you can use the present tense to explain the figures and the tables, right? Although you have already collected them, to explain the figures and tables, you can use present tense. Like for an example, table 1.1 shows that shows the correlationship between variables, blah, blah, blah. You can use the present tense to explain the figures and tables. But the other things, to explain other findings, you can use the past tense, right? And moving on to the conclusion, in conclusion, we can use again both parts, right? Past tense or as present tense can be used to, where necessary, you can use the past tense and present tense to show and to summarize the main results and main obtains you have obtained through your study. And if you have any future suggestions or any recommendations, you can use the future tense as well for such kind of recommendations and suggestions for the future studies. So that is how we use the tenses in conclusion. And another important thing is we usually use the passive voice in abstract and in methodology, in results and discussion part. Also on, we use the passive voice, right? Passive voice is used. Like for an example, in abstract, you can state like data were collected, results were analyzed through this software, blah, blah, blah. You can use the passive voice in abstract, right? Same thing happen in methodology, results and discussion, right? Usually we use the passive voice, but I don't say like 100% we use the passive voice for the entire research work. There are some cases we can't use the passive voice and we had to use the active voice. But most of the cases in abstract and the methodology, results and discussion part, we have to use the passive voice. And in literature review, we can have a mixed method, like we can use passive and active. Where necessary, you can use them. So most of the time we use passive, but eventually we can adjust them and we can use a mixed method when it comes to literature, right? For an example, you can state like John 1998 argues that blah, blah, blah. Then many studies have illustrated that there is a significant difference between blah, blah, blah. So likewise, we can use the tenses and the passive voice and active voice where necessary. So you should be very careful when you use these type of tenses and passive voice and active voice in your research reports, right? So when it comes to introduction, in introduction, we barely use the passive voice. Most of the time in the introduction part, active voice is used. Passive voice can be, it is very rarely used in introduction. And conclusion also same. In conclusion also, passive voice is very rarely used. Most of the time, active voice is used. Yeah, so that is about the tenses actually, and the passive voice and active voice tenses that we need to follow when we write the research report papers, right? So, okay, so that is all about the chapter 1, and moving on to the lesson 2. So we are going to have a overview about the research methodologies, and especially we are going to discuss about the qualitative and the quantitative research, right? So up to now, we have completed the lesson 1, the academic writing, literature review, and the referencing. So then moving on to the research methods. So first, before we move to the research methods, first we need to know the assumptions we have. As we are dealing with the scientific knowledge and the scientific world, as we are dealing with scientific theories or something, we should bias on the assumptions most of the time when we conduct scientific research, right? Before the scientists conduct their research, they make these type of basic assumptions about the world and about how the things are work in real world practical scenarios before they are going to start a research work, right? So usually science assume that the nature follows the certain order, right? Usually we assume that when we are going to conduct a research, we assume that our nature follows a certain order. That means we assume that the things do not happen randomly, but instead of that, it follows the pattern. That is the major assumption we identify when it comes to the scientific research. We assume that nothing will be happen randomly. Everything follows a pattern when it comes to real world scenarios, right? For an example, we know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west every day. And then what about the seasonal changes? The seasonal changes also happen in a regular cycle, like spring, summer, and autumn, and also the winter. So likewise, the regular cycle is there. There are no any random events. It follows a set of order, and it is a certain. That is our assumption, right? Because of the nature is well organized, and it follows a certain order and a logical set of order, we can study it very effectively, and we can even make discoveries based on the regularities. We can identify discoveries while assuming that our nature follows a certain order, and while assuming that nothing will be happen randomly. That is the major assumption we have when it comes to scientific research. And another thing is, we assume that when we conduct most of the research, scientific researchers, when they conduct research studies, they assume that under similar conditions, the same event will be produce the similar results, right? If we consider the similar conditions, the same event will produce the similar results. That is another assumption, right? For an example, imagine you drop a ball from a certain height, so it will always fall down due to the gravity. That is another assumption we have. We assume that in the same condition, in similar type of condition, if we do a same experiment, we will receive the same results, similar results, right? If we heat water to 100 degrees at 100 Celsius at sea level, it will always boil. So that is the assumption we have. It is really important because it allows the scientist to repeat the experiments and get the reliable results time to time, while assuming that the similar conditions give the similar results for same events, while assuming that they can repeat the experiments and they can get the reliable results at the end of the day. So it is really important to have that assumptions, especially when they deal with the scientific research. right? If something is predictable, it means that we can study it scientifically. But let's say if it is, if there is something that cannot be predictable, we cannot scientifically study it. We can, but it is really hard, right? Even through that assumption, we can make hypotheses, we can test them with experiments, we can test them with different methods as well, while assuming that in same conditions, in similar type of conditions, we can get the same output. So that is a good assumption, right? A very effective and good assumption that we can have in scientific research. And another thing is, we assume that everything happens for a reason, right? When the scientists conduct the research studies, they assume that everything happened for a reason. If there is an event, there is an event, or if there is a problem, there must be a cause behind it. That is another most important assumption, right? Scientists, they believe that by studying the event very carefully, they can identify their causes as well, right? Each and every event they can identify. On the other hand, they can identify the reasons because they assume that everything happens for a reason, right? For an example, if a person falls sick, there is a reason. That may be a virus, that may be a bacteria, that may be another causes for their illness, right? So for every reason, so for every event, there is a reason. Even for a small illness, there may be a reason, right? If there is an earthquake, there may be a reason. If there is a flood, there is a reason, right? If there is a, let's say, if there is a low grade, if you receive a low grade for your exams, there may be a reason. So everything happens due to reason. So that is another assumption, right? And additionally, the scientists assume that the cause and effect fundamental is there when they conduct scientific research. The same thing, right? Same as the previous one, right? As I earlier told you, most of the scientists, they assume that everything happens for a reason. So same as that one, they assume that for each and every research, it follows the cause and effect fundamental, right? That means when something is happened, it is caused by something else, right? That means there is an effect and a cause, right? Cause and effect is there. So that fundamental is there when we conduct a research. So when something happens, so that is the effect. It is usually caused by something else. So that something else is the cause, right? So it is like, for an example, smoking causes cancer. Likewise, we have a effect, and behind the effect, we have a cause. So those are few common assumptions that most of the scientists follow when they note when they conduct scientific research, right? So we have a few more things to discuss, but I feel like it is enough for today. So under this lesson, actually, I am trying to discuss the scientific methods and the limitations, and also the key characteristics of the scientific research. And then especially we will discuss about the sampling techniques as well. Sampling techniques we can divide into probabilistic sampling and non-probability sampling. So we will discuss different methods on the probabilistic sampling and the non-probability sampling, right? This will be useful when you are going to, select your sampling technique in your research, right? And then especially we will discuss about the qualitative and the quantitative research methodologies, the differences between qualitative and the quantitative studies. So usually in physical science students, right, physical sciences related research, we conduct quantitative studies than the qualitative one. But there are some cases, but nowadays, most of the researchers use a mixed method while combining qualitative and quantitative one. To give more credibility and value addition, we can apply the quantitative one as well, right? We can start with the qualitative one, and at the end of the study, we can add the quantitative part as well. Most of the physical science, like engineering students, you had to do the quantitative studies than the qualitative studies, right? I'm not saying like you can't do qualitative studies, you can do, but as engineers, right? As engineers, you are doing some developments now, like development-based projects now, right? Including the experiments and the analytical parts, you are doing development-based projects, right? Research. So there you had to use these quantitative methods than the qualitative one, right? You can apply qualitative, but most of the time you have to follow the quantitative one or else the mixed method. And we will discuss the research methods as well, different type of research methods, especially the case study, observational, co-host, and the case control study. And then we will discuss more about the quantitative and qualitative studies and different type of variables we will discuss and different type of experimental types, including this type of testings. We will discuss them under this lesson. So as we don't have enough time, I will stop now. Any questions up to this point regarding the referencings and the way of downloading the papers? I will upload these materials on LMS, also research papers as well, and that APA style reference guide. And I will share the assignment guideline as well. So you can start your works now as you know something about literature reviews and the referencing. But if you need any guidance to do the Mendeley, use the Mendeley or install Mendeley and do the referencing, if you need any assistance, you can reach me. Right, so I will guide you. Yes, so that is all I need to discuss today. Any questions? Any clarifications? Okay, seems you don't have any questions. If you have any doubts, you can reach me, or else next week you can ask. And try to install Mendeley or else in Node or whatever the sources you can use. Try to practice it today onwards. So then that will be helpful for you to develop your final research, literature review, and also your assignment as well, right? I will strictly mark your literature review assignment as that would be the, I think that will be the only assignment for this module. So I will strictly mark it. So be careful when you develop your literature review assignment, right? I will share the guidelines. Formally, I will share it via your WhatsApp groups. Okay, then if you don't have any questions, we can wrap up. Thank you very much for joining, and thank you, and see you on next week then. Thank you. Bye.